Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, frequent flyers. We are having a special episode of The Lounge today. Jamie and I encountered multiple IT gremlins as we were setting up today's podcast. And you know what? We decided to roll with it. We decided to pivot and we played around with some new features. So we're just here to have some Friday fun and talk about finding the beauty in discomfort because we certainly experienced a lot of it in the past 45 minutes. Jamie, it's so awesome to have you here with me today. Thank you so much for pivoting with me and for having fun in the process.
Absolutely, Sarah. I am so happy to be here, and I'm in this boat with you. It's been a fun ride already, so I can't wait to see what other Friday fun we have.
Yes, and we decided to put up a background that incorporates airplanes and space because we both share a love for that. You know, you've been in the industry now for over 20 years, and you're very passionate about helping to not only develop others in the industry, but also work on yourself, do the hard work, including personal work and career development. And so I know you've recently been through a lot of different trainings and a lot of different personal things. And so I'm excited to just dive into whatever decides to come up today.
Yes, absolutely. Let's dive in.
All right. So we met because we know some pretty other badass women like Julia, Jill, Jenny, Joe, all the J's. If you don't have a J name, I'm sorry I didn't say your name, but we probably both know you too. And you and I have both been feeling the like heaviness of the last couple weeks. So I know you were watching yesterday's podcast with Meryl, and things have just been feeling kind of like ugh lately. Would you agree?
I would, and personally, I find that when things happen that are uncomfortable, it doesn't tend to be just one thing. It seems to be kind of like a pile on, and sometimes it's just an energy that you can't explain, and sometimes it's real life things. I shared with you
Yeah.
before we went on. I suffered a personal loss a couple of weeks ago, and so definitely feeling the heaviness for
Yeah.
sure, and excited to see the growth on the other side of this.
Yeah. And I think that's something that we can, sometimes we intellectualize concepts like this, right? And so when we're in a great period of life and things are rocking and rolling and things feel smooth and we feel on top of the world, it's easy to say that and feel like, yeah, we got this. But then when we're in the thick of it and we're just getting wave after wave after wave, it's really hard to kind of accept and embody this. So I'm curious, what has been something that you've really had a lot of benefit from in the last couple of weeks that has helped you kind of move through that discomfort?
It's crazy. Even when you're in the midst of something that's so sad or that brings you down, there's still so much beauty around you. And so, my son obviously brings me so much joy. So seeing
Yeah.
him and almost seeing him in a different light when I'm sad, like looking at him, like he just brings me so much joy. I have such a good circle of people around me. And it wasn't until probably the last 10 to 15 years that I was so intentional about who I let in that circle. And
Mm.
it really changes your life. And sometimes that circle does change. But I have the most amazing group of support and cheerleaders and people that are brutally honest with me. And so when I'm down, that is my go-to. That is what brings me up. So my family, my husband and my son are just amazing. They're my light, but you still need that other support system as well outside of family. I truly believe and I have a really strong one.
Yes, and that's really important to remember that we can lean on our community, right? And it's okay to come and ask for help. It's okay to have conversations like this, and there will be times where you're the base and you're supporting, and then there's going to be other times where people will support you. And so that's why it's so important that no matter how much we love work, because a lot of people in aviation are very passionate, right? Most of the hobbies tend to be within the industry. We're always talking about aviation, but it's important to cultivate those other aspects of ourselves so that we can have the relief and the family and the community there for us when we need it, rather than giving everything to the job.
No, absolutely. And my best friend it's probably about 15 years ago actually. She said once like your arm could be like cut off and bleeding, and if I asked you how you're doing, you'd be like, "I'm fine. How are you?" And so it's a learning thing to not be fine and just to say, "You know what? You, you don't even necessarily need anything." Like I think you put it so beautifully when we were talking. You were like, I don't need to fix anything, but if you just need to talk. And I think having people around you like that is so important because just sending the good energies or sending the prayers or whatever it is so important to have in helping us get through hard times. So having people that you can be honest with and say, hey, look, I'm going through something right now. I don't need you to fix it. I just wanted you to know. I think it took a long time for me to get there, and it's really made a huge difference in how I approach not just fulfilling, filling my cup up, but in how I approach trying to help others.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it can be hard to not want to fix things for other people, right? Especially when you really care about them and you want them to feel better. And especially coming from the roles that we've had in business aviation, our literal job is to fix the problem, to come up with solutions to problems that don't even exist yet, but that might occur. And so it can be difficult to turn that off. But it's really something that we can work towards because it's not always about the nail. Have you seen that video? Have you seen that small video?
No.
I encourage everyone who's watching us today or watching this replay to Google It's Not About the Nail. It's a really funny video where this woman has a nail in her forehead and she's talking to her partner, a male partner, and she's like, I just been having these headaches. And he's like, and she's like, you always do this, and it's like, you never listen. And he's like, okay, and then she talks again for like 30 seconds. And he finally is just like, that must have been really difficult for you. And she's like, it is. And then she goes to kiss him and then, their foreheads hit and she's like, ow. And he's like, oh, come on. But it's so true. Like we don't always need, we might even know that it's there, but we just want someone to hold us and listen to us in that discomfort.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So for people that might be going through something right now, how would you encourage them to, outside of leaning on their support network, what are some of the things that they can do to get back on their feet and to find that beauty, right? To allow themselves to sit in it.
Mhm. I think really taking a mental X-ray of your mindset. Um,
Mm,
I've been listening to Think Like a Rocket Scientist, and that's one of the things that he really talks about is, are you able to like, and you and Marilyn, you talked about this yesterday, like being introspective, and like, are you able
yeah.
to like actually look and evaluate how you are viewing situations? And that's really a huge thing because when you can make that shift to, this is a hard thing, but instead of saying, what should I do next? What should happen next? And you shift to what could happen next, then it changes your actions afterwards.
Mm.
And so all of a sudden you're not seeing, what's so comfortable, you're seeing what's so possible. And I think that that is really important, especially when you're in lows, to say like, what could be on the other side of this? Not, what do I expect to be on the other side of this?
And that's really important. One of the things that I sent to Meryl actually this morning as a follow-up from our podcast was it was an image of someone meditating, and that the bulk of the problems we face are because we do not get still and silent with ourselves, and we're not examining, what's actually happening under the hood, so to speak. And so I love this take a mental x-ray of your mindset because it's so intangible, right? It's hard to quantify and touch the mindset. We can touch the brain, we can't touch the mind, but yet we can still explore these different patterns that we have, these different thought processes, and that's why the journaling is so powerful because you can then objectively look at the situation from the view like we have as our background here that we decided to choose and put up before we went live, to gain that perspective, that different viewpoint.
Absolutely. I remember reading an article, it's probably been 8 or 10 years ago, that this professor at Harvard did, and he talked about how if you just focus on professional development, which is still important, everyone needs to focus on that,
Yeah.
but you'll never actually see true growth and change because you're focusing on your technical skills. So if
Mm,
you start to look at your mindset and how you view things and how you approach change, how you approach diversity, how you approach different areas of your career, instead of just trying to grow your skill set, then that's where you actually start to see true growth, and you start to embrace the change. Like, all of a sudden, change isn't scary. Change isn't like the bad word in the room. Like, oh my gosh, change is coming. Everybody freak out. Now you're
right.
like, okay, let's go. Like,
Yeah.
I'm excited for this. So it really just changes your overall approach in life, in relationships, in your job, everything.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it is a choice, right? We can choose to be overcome with this, well, I don't know what's going to happen, or we can choose to be excited by it. And, I mean, I'm Sarah the pivoter. I've been through a lot of change in the last 5 years, and I've certainly rolled with those. That doesn't mean that I don't have moments where I don't get overwhelmed by
Mhm.
the, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? But I am more quick to get myself out of it. I'm more quick to recognize the patterns that leading up to it can start to signal, oh, hey, something's happening here. And that's why
Mhm.
it's so important. I think a lot of people have a misconception of how the work works, right? And we want it to be a one and done, like, oh, I did the thing, so now I'm good. Right? Have you
Exactly.
ever have you ever kind of come up against that in your own thinking and then kinda laughed at yourself going like, "Oh, yeah, okay, I had to do that again."
Yes, absolutely. Especially, when we're talking about career growth, like, okay, I reached this milestone. Like, now what? Like,
Mhm.
okay, I achieved it. And I think I've recently read Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. And
Mm.
one of the things she talks about is, instead of thinking of your growth, your professional growth, as climbing the ladder, because there's only one direction to go if you're climbing the ladder. You're either going up or down. And she's like, if you're going up, then you're probably staring at someone else's butt. But if you think of it as more of a jungle gym, then it becomes this whole other complex and exciting challenge. Because if you think of a jungle gym, there's different areas, there's different challenges, and there's also different opportunities where if somebody's behind you, you can, pull them out of the ball pit, or encourage them. And there's just different strengths that are needed. There's different skill sets that are needed for different areas of the jungle gym. But I think that's really helped change how I look at my own personal growth and where I want to go. Like, it doesn't have, there's not a straight trajectory for where I can go. I can bounce around from to different areas of the jungle gym and have
Yeah,
fun doing it, just like in a real jungle gym.
that is so great. I love that. As you were speaking, I was literally reminded of the leaps and bounds that I used to go to as a kid, and it's just like the giant McDonald's playpen with all the
Yes.
tubes that you kinda go through, right? And that was so much
Mhm.
fun.
Yes.
But what a great way to recognize, right? There are different areas where you're going to have more fun. Maybe you kind of gravitate towards certain areas, um, and your friends gravitate towards others, right? And that's why we also need differences and diversity in our workplaces and in our friendship groups so that we can have opportunities to learn from other people, but also, you don't want to go play in the ball pit. Someone else loves playing at the ball pit, right? So let them
Yes.
go and do that. Um, I really like that. That was great. And so I
Mhm.
just popped that up on the screen, people who wanna check out that book. Um,
Thank
the
you.
other thing I was thinking of, if you're going up, you're staring at somebody's butt, it's, um, I had a coach who talked about, the spiral staircase. And so there's a light side and a dark side. So you're gonna go through the dark side again, but you might as well go up while you're doing it, right? Rather
Mhm.
than going back into going down. And think of it, as we're at the ground street of a home, right? You can only look so far down the street.
Yeah.
If you go to the second floor, the third floor on the roof, now you get a different view and you get more awareness. Again, the signals like, oh, I see this car coming from, that's my friend. They're almost here, rather than they're pulling in your driveway and you're like, I wasn't ready, you know? Uh,
Exactly.
so it's just about that progression. And another thing I heard from you is, you get there and it's like, now what?
Mhm.
Right? This is why it's so important that we like ourselves now and we have that internal approval, because otherwise the now what just keeps happening no matter how big the achievement gets. There's always more mountains to climb.
Mhm. I agree. And I think that goes for goals, it goes for possessions. One of my favorite sayings has always been, if I'm not enough without something, I'm never going to be enough with it,
Mm,
because you just keep doing that. Like, okay, what's next? Like, what do I need to fill that void? And you really have to figure out how to fill that without things or accomplishments or approvals. Like,
yeah,
really, you're right. It has to be an internal victory before you can really, like, then you just start to pivot all over the place and you're just having fun.
right.
And I appreciate what you said too. Like, there's still the lows, right? There's still going to be moments where things are hard, where you make mistakes. I remember I was going through something at work, and I was talking to my sister on the phone, and I was like, it's just so heavy. Like, I don't know how to release it. Like, I
Mm,
don't know how to put this down. It's so heavy and it's weighing on me so much. And it just took time. And again, it took like looking at the situation. Okay, how are we going to be stronger as a team after we get through this? How am I going to be a better leader after I get through this? But there was like a period where I was very, very low and very low on
mm.
myself. And, a lot of self doubt crept in. And I am happy to say that myself and my team, we came out stronger on the other end of it. But it does get heavy. It does get heavy
Yeah.
sometimes.
And, it's important to acknowledge that, right? Because otherwise we fall into the toxic positivity realm, like we talked about yesterday. And it's just this kind of putting lipstick on a pig, right? It's still a pig. So we want to make sure that we're not glossing over or, kind of swinging to the other side of things, but acknowledging that it's difficult and you keep going anyway. Like Meryl said yesterday, like the bison that's going through the snowstorm, it's hard, it sucks, but it keeps going anyway because it knows that in order to get to where it needs to go, this is the path, right? And there's no other option because that storm's not ending anytime soon.
No, I agree. And that's where I just try to encourage anyone that I talk to, like, if you can just embrace that discomfort, it's going to be uncomfortable in the beginning. I have one gentleman that I work with, and everything, he's always like, I don't think I'm ready for this. Like, he's scared of failure. Like, I don't think I'm ready for, more responsibility. What happens if, and I'm kind of gotten a reputation to where they're like, you better not say that because she's going to put you in that situation, because I love it. I'm like, tell me what makes you uncomfortable, and I'm going to ask you to do it 10
Mhm.
times more than if I didn't know that it made you uncomfortable, because I truly believe
Right.
that is where the majority of growth comes from. It comes from failing. It comes from making mistakes. And I think, Ryan Leake was at leadership, and he said, he learned way more from all his failures than he ever did from success. And I think
Mhm.
that is true across so many different levels. Is failure teaches us so much, and it not only does
Absolutely.
it humble us, but it helps us to be able to take bigger risk down the line that are going to have those bigger payoffs. But if we always play it safe, then maybe we won't ever feel that failure, but we're also never going to see that growth.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like when we go to the gym, right? The muscle, if you're just doing the same rep scheme, the same weight, there's a point in which nothing happens, right?
Mhm.
And you don't have any change, you don't have any growth. And it's like when you go to the gym and you're sore the next day, it feels good. You're like, yeah, it's working. Like I can feel it. And we kind of get the dopamine release off of that. It's different with the mindset work. You don't always feel it the same way. And so that's why it's important to have those people who will be honest with you, but also to regularly partake in, if like I do the Space Kind Leadership program training, and I did it last year, levels 1 and 2. And then this year I'm a group lead. And so we're about to do Space Kind 13 starting May 7th. And it's like this 8 weeks hero's journey. And by going in and doing it again, when I did it in January, um, you're doing the work again and you're reflecting and you're realizing, hey, what's still the same? What's now different? Wow, my perspective has shifted so much that I didn't even think about this. This used to be like a major issue for me that would cause me anxiety or stress. And I didn't even like it didn't pop up on my radar at all. And it's like, wow, that's great growth. Or, oh, this came back in a sneaky way. Like I kind of was like, oh yeah, I fixed perfectionism. I don't have that anymore. Look at all the things that are imperfect in my life. But really, it was there just in like sneaky ways. It had more disguise and I didn't notice it right away. And then kind of revisiting this material, I was like, oh, yeah, it's still there. Um, just in different areas or in different ways. So it's important to be able to also have those aha moments because, it's we got to laugh at ourselves and we can have fun while doing very serious work. It doesn't have to always be this like somber struggle that we make it out to be.
Oh, absolutely. And I love that. And it's just so important. And it's like you're investing in yourself, but you're also learning and growing at the same time. And I think that's key. You recommended me to a training that I
Yeah.
went to in February. And I was talking to Cameron Singh a few weeks ago, and I was telling him, like, it's something that I love doing, but I was so uncomfortable. And
Mhm.
because there was so much I didn't know, there was so much I didn't know. And I walked away from there like my brain was overwhelmed. My heart was so full of passion, and it was like everything is conflicting. But it was
Yeah.
great. It was truly a great investment, and I appreciate you so much for referring me to that. And
You're
I'm
so welcome.
excited to continue just to get out of my comfort zone.
Yeah. And that's the thing is I was the same. It's sometimes the things that we love doing and we might even have natural ability at, there's still something to be said about the discipline of craft, of doing the reps to make it even better, right? And then when you start to realize some of the maybe faux pas that you were doing or just how much more you are invested now in whatever format and you look back and you're like, "Oh my god, that was terrible." But actually it wasn't. It was just that you had a different level, a different approach to it. Nobody necessarily likes, if you've got a natural ability at something, we love that, right? But to develop it really intentionally and hone, that is mastery. And ultimately, that's what we want to do with ourselves. It can be a physical skill, it can be, a talent, but just the process we then apply to our own lives, that's where it really matters.
Yes, for sure. And I love that. Going back to the mindset, right? It's not like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that early on. Like, it's like, man, look how far I've come. Like,
Yeah.
it was good then, but now it's getting great, and it's going to be amazing. It's going to be awesome. And my son is 5.5. If you tell him he's 5, he'll correct you real quick and tell you he's 5.5. But he loves baseball. We're a big baseball family. He loves baseball. He watches entire baseball games on TV. He
Wow.
wants to watch the highlights in the morning. He knows all the players and everything. And so since he was about 2, he's been a great hitter. He could always hit the ball. I mean,
Yeah.
at a very young age. And so he would play in these little leagues, and we finally decided to put him like in a club league. And the coach actually asked for him and didn't realize that he was too young to actually be on this team till it was too late. And so
Okay.
he's on this team with older boys, and he was always such a good hitter. But one thing that he had not perfected was catching. And in practice, towards the end of the season, curveball came and just bam, like got him in the mouth. He was holding his
Ooh.
glove in the wrong place, and there was blood everywhere. It was so terrifying. And so he played with a lot less confidence after that, after he got hit. And so at the end of the season, he still did great. We're still so proud of him, of course. And we were talking about the upcoming season, and he sat there and he said, "Mom," he's like, I don't know if I want to do it." And I said, "Why not?" And he was like, "I just don't want to get hit in the face again."
Mhm.
I said, "Bud, I
Yeah.
gotta tell you something." I said, "Does your face still hurt?" And
Yeah.
he takes his little hands and he goes, and he's like feeling all over and he's pushing, and he was like, "No." And I said, "Exactly." I said, "The pain is temporary, but the lesson is we got to work on catching."
Yeah.
And Sarah, like 3 weeks ago, he got the game ball at his game because he was first baseman.
No.
And he caught 3 outs, and the kid is like he's mastering his skill, right? And it's so uncomfortable. Like no
Mm.
matter what you're in, if you're in sales, marketing, consulting, a service, like you can be really good at your job, and then all of a sudden, you got a bloody mouth because there
Right.
was one skill that maybe you hadn't worked on or perfected, and it's embarrassing and it can reduce your confidence. But if you'll take the time to look at it as an opportunity to say, okay, you know what am I going to do to make sure that I'm ready for that next curveball? Then you're only going to become the master of your craft.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. It's like, does it still hurt? Because I think that's what we fail to recognize. But you just made it very physical with, does it still hurt your face now? And then he realized, like, oh, no, it doesn't. Oh, right. And it allowed him to think differently. And sometimes those more internal hurts, the anxieties and the worries, where it's not a physical injury, it can again be more difficult to touch and check in. But this is why it's so important that we learn how to emotionally regulate ourselves and understand the signals that our bodies are giving us when we're moving too fast or we're numbing with food or alcohol or drugs or any high dopamine activity. The gym can be a way to numb, right? If you're like excessively exercising so that you just come home exhausted hoping that you don't have to feel anything, right?
Amazon.
Yeah, shopping on Amazon, getting packages every
Yeah.
day,
If my
right?
husband's listening, he's laughing at the irony. But yes.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely, when we first moved in here, it would be like, I'd forget what I ordered. And I'd be like, oh, it's like Christmas,
Yeah,
And then, your statement comes at the end of the month. You're like, it was not like Christmas
it definitely
at
was.
all. um, but what a great practice. So just reminding ourselves to check in, like, where does it hurt? And does it still hurt now? Or is this still true? And examining our thought patterns and finding the holes in the argument. I think if we can approach it from that logic based way and combine it with the sensations in our body, and we start to tune in to what the signals mean, because we're very good, especially in corporate aviation, at ignoring our hunger signals, at ignoring when we have to go to the bathroom, at ignoring discomfort, and it serves in some ways, but it very much limits us in other ways.
No, you're absolutely right. And it's a 24/7 industry.
Yeah.
And you know, I love that some people have jobs where they can silence their phone or disconnect. Like I don't get that luxury. It's 24/7. And so you really have to intentionally take the time to make sure that you are checking in. Like what are those pain points? What still hurts? Where do you need to grow? Where do you need to let go and release of something that you're holding on to, maybe against somebody or against yourself,
Yeah.
and and allow yourself to do that.
I think also you're touching on a good point. Many people work in a 24/7 industry, but that does not mean that you can't put in boundaries. That does not inhibit your work, because a lot of times people in 24/7 environments will go, "Oh, well, that won't work for me because," and then we have this convenient excuse, right? And so it's important to make sure that you do have boundaries, but it may not look the same as other people's boundaries. We also don't live in France where we turn our phones off at 4 and then, check them next week. It's a very different environment where, you may need to be connected for your job, but having very clear, hard boundaries and time off, just as hard as you work and how much you show up, you want to show up with that same intensity for your rest, for your family, for
Mhm.
your extracurricular activities that bring you joy, right? And so, how can you bring your full self to all of those things?
No, exactly. And if you don't, it's going to affect all of those things that you love. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. No, we have finite motivation, finite energy sources. I always like to use the analogy of the iPhone or any phone, it doesn't have to be an iPhone. But, we're on these things when it's like 1% battery and we're like trying to race the clock of sending the message or the email and hope that it can go out before the phone dies. Whereas if we would have had more awareness and we plugged that phone in 20 minutes ago, that stress would not be there, right? But now you're like, it's halfway sending, your phone dies, doesn't go through, and it also takes about 15 minutes for your phone to turn back on, right? Because you just depleted it way down to the bone and you don't have the right lightning cable or whatever, you know? So again, it's the awareness. When you can have the awareness of like, oh, that battery is, 30%. Let me go find a charger. Let me go plug it in. Now you're in a much better position because you're not going down to the bare bones. And so you respond differently, right? It's a response versus a reaction.
Exactly. It goes back to, it reminds me of the analogy you used earlier of the house. Like you could see it coming.
Yeah.
If you change your perspective, change your mindset, don't just stay where it's comfortable down low and you feel safe. Like go up the
Yeah.
stairs, climb the ladder on the jungle gym and go over the top of the little sphere thing with all the holes in it where you could fall, but you can still see a lot better from up there.
Yes. Oh my goodness. It's reminding me too, like when I was a kid, I used to hang on those, not the monkey bars, but they were just like the bars that you would like put your legs over and then like swing upside down,
Mhm.
and then now we look at that and we're like, "Oh, I would not do that because I'd fall on my face or my head." And, same thing with like little kids going down a mountain, skiing or snowboarding, right? Have you ever seen those videos where they're giving themselves a pep talk?
Yes, I love it. I
They're the
love it.
best. They're the
Yes,
best.
and
And
put the music in the background.
they work. You know how I know? Because last time I went snowboarding, I went down a black diamond by accident. I'm so inconsistent with how regularly I board that I wouldn't intentionally choose to go down one. And so this is actually 2 trips ago, and, followed my friends, but missed the blue turnoff. So I'm, like, peering down and was like, "Oh, that's pretty steep." I don't know how this is gonna happen. So I literally pep talked myself like the little 3-year-old and was just like, "You can do it. Yeah, toe back, heel in. Okay." Like, "Wee," just this whole thing going down. And I got down the mountain, I didn't fall, and I had so much fun. So that little 3-year-old kid is now my spirit animal and my snowboarding guide whenever I go down a mountain.
I love it. I think it's so important to have that 3-year-old voice in everything. Like whatever we're doing that's scary,
Yeah,
like walk yourself through it. I love taking walks and talking to myself. I do.
yeah.
It's even if it's not out loud, like internally to myself, like walking myself through situations. I think that 3-year-old voice is really handy.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what I needed when I was snowboarding and why I was so terrible at it because I didn't have my 3-year-old voice.
I
Maybe
think
one of these
so.
days I'll try it again.
Yeah, maybe they need to bring this into, like, all the snowboarding schools and ski schools, just, like,
Built in.
have the little 3-year-old kid school, ski school come tell the adults what they need to do and give them some guidance. But, it's also when we kind of tap into that inner child version of us, that doesn't have the restrictions and boundaries that we often, did it to ourself, but we adopted these viewpoints from other people. We again get a new perspective because kids don't see what's not possible, they see what's possible. And then somewhere along the way, we lose that ability and we just look for all the reasons why it can't work, why it won't work,
Yeah.
and why it's much safer to stay here.
Mhm. No, I'm just trying to wait until you're ready. If you keep waiting until you're ready, you may never take that leap. You may never achieve the kind of fulfillment that you're missing out on because you're trying to stay comfortable.
Absolutely. I mean, I think about how I became a business owner, and my mom has been an entrepreneur my entire life, so I very much grew up with that energy, and truth be told, the way that I show up at work is a very entrepreneurial kind of mindset and way of doing things. Um, but at the same time, I never once thought of doing it on my own until I was in a position where that was the only choice and it made the most sense because of COVID. And I was
Right.
based in Asia at the time, so aviation was just like not happening, right? Um, and still, did I feel ready? No, no, not at all. I still don't feel ready. I'm not like 4 years in. I still don't feel ready as an entrepreneur, but I'm doing it. I'm figuring it out. And I think
And
that's the thing,
I love it.
knowing you can figure it out.
Yes. I think there's so many people that are just waiting for permission. They're waiting
Mm,
for somebody to tell them it's their time.
yeah.
This is what you should be doing. Why aren't you doing this? And then they're going to start doing it. Or, I had one girl and she had sent me a job and was like, "What do you think about this for me?" And it took me a little while to get back to her. I didn't see it. It was in my LinkedIn
Mm,
messages. And I said, let's talk next week. Like, let me know what's going on. So we talked and I said, "So you applied for the job?" And she was like, "No, I was waiting to hear from you." And I was like,
mm,
"Oh my goodness. Like, no, like you don't need anyone's permission to go after something that you might be interested in."
yeah,
And I think there's so many people that just feel that way. And it's somewhat of a holding pattern.
absolutely. We can give ourselves that permission. And this is actually something that I do with my coaching clients. And the first time I did it, I was astounded at how powerful it was. But literally taking out a piece of paper and writing down, Sarah, you have permission to take a nap, to have a piece of chocolate, to apply for that job, even though you don't have XYZ qualification. Whatever the thing is, we have this weird wiring in our brain, and maybe it's from the old school days of, your permission slip to go to the bathroom in school and, all that kind of stuff, but it works. And I remembered, like, doing the exercise, like, "Okay, whatever." But then I did the thing and I didn't feel the resistance, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." So I just kept doing it. So now if I'm really resisting something, as soon as I catch myself, I'll actually write myself a permission slip.
I love
And
it.
I've done it with every single one of my coaching clients, including men in their 50s and 60s who usually roll their eyes at me, but then they do it. They're like, "Okay, Sarah, I'll try." And then they come back to me and they're like, "Oh my God, that was amazing. I actually played golf and I didn't feel guilty." And it was like, I could have done this the whole time. And I was like, yeah, right. I mean, I think that too. We could be doing this for ourselves, but we often give away the accountability and responsibility to somebody else because then I think, and a lot of psychology supports this, if we fail, it's not our fault. We can kind of push the blame aside.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And that accountability is so important. Like, it can't be, you know, not everything is in our control.
No. Oh, Jamie's computer might have just had had a disconnect. So today, I just want to share with you guys. We had StreamYard freeze on us. It wouldn't connect to all destinations. I had to download a new browser just so that we could go live. So we're going to take a brief pause. I'm going to check in with Jamie and see if she can come back online. But this is how you literally go with the flow. We created a banner to share with all of you guys today because sometimes these things happen. And this is exactly why The Lounge is a live stream podcast, because you cannot edit real life. You cannot stop things from happening. And sometimes it's going to be a sucker punch in a pocket of clear turbulence that you were not expecting. And other times you have a bit of awareness. So yeah, she's jumped off. I'm gonna go and check on her, see if we can get her back online. So if you're watching us live, give us about 5 minutes or so, and I'll come back on and report whether or not we're able to wrangle the IT gremlins to get her backstage. All right, we'll see you guys soon. We're back. Oh, here's going with the flow.
It's a never ending day of pivots, and I love it.
So good. You know what I also love? We were talking about this feeding the ducks music. This music that I just played was called Feeding the Ducks. We're like, what is that? So now we know. And I was thinking, when are we going to play this music? Well, I had the perfect opportunity when the computer died.
Even handy.
I was like, you know what? we'll be right back. We created this banner because we thought something might happen. So please enjoy this music, and I'll report back in 5 minutes.
Please go please go feed the ducks and then come back and join us.
Exactly. Yeah. Go for a walk, and we'll be right back. Take a few deep breaths. And this is why I do a live stream, because real life things happen like this, right? It will happen when you're doing something. You could be on stage in front of 500 people and the slides stop working, or you forget your line. That's happened to me before. I've
Mhm.
certainly forgotten something that I wanted to say in a speech, but then upon reflection realized, you know what? Wasn't necessary. And nobody else knew that that was supposed to happen or not. So go with the flow, right?
Yep, just go with it. That was the theme of today before, and, I think it's still very relevant.
Yes. Well, it's relevant even beyond today, right? But it can be hard. I mean, I talk about this a lot, and yet I come up against roadblocks and I'll dig my heels in, or I'll be like, man, this is not what I want, right? And when the reality is not matching our expectation, that's where that suffering really comes in.
Mhm.
But we can just take a breath and choose to continue to fight what is happening, or accept it, surrender to it, and just go, you know what? I'm going to show up for what's here.
Yeah, it's a shift in perspective and
Yeah.
embracing, unpopular opinion that I have is I unlike many, I don't necessarily believe that everything happens for a reason. I
Mm,
think sometimes stuff just happens. I think there's so much free will that things just happen, but we can control how we respond to them and the ability to change our future for the better or for the
mm,
worse. And so if we can embrace the bad, the good, and just say like, okay, what is my mindset going to be? How am I going to recover? How am I going to pivot this? And what's going to be on the other side of it? Like, what does my growth look like because I'm going through this or because this thing happened?
yeah. Yeah. I think that with humans, we are story and meaning making machines. And that's why we connect by story. And it's very easy in hindsight to look and go, oh, yeah, that was obvious, or that was supposed to happen. Right. But I agree with you that sometimes things just happen. Right. It's not because you were good or because you were bad or because of XYZ. Um, but what you take away from it, that's the story that you get to write. And I think that's really important for people to understand. Um, if you want to believe that it happened for a reason because you found a reason, great. That's also fine. There's no one right way to come at this, right? This is just a perspective. But ultimately, it is up to us to choose how we relate to the experience and how we find meaning in the experience. And we can use the meaning to really like suck us down and keep us low, or we can use that meaning to fuel us and to propel us into really impact driven missions, or giving back, or finding ways for that to not happen for others, right?
Yes, the giving back piece I think is so crucial, and just seeing the purpose
Mm,
in life and in things. And I truly believe that giving back to others without expectation of accolades or recognition is one of the most important things you can do in leadership and in life in general. Um, so see the beauty in things, shift your perspective, and like you said, use it for the betterment of everybody around you.
yeah, it's really special to share in community and to contribute. I've been in a lot of different environments, and whether you're into going for a retreat or not, or having communal living or not, I want you to think about concept of camping, right? A lot of people in our network would probably go camping, and there's various forms of camping: glamping, RV camping, tent camping. Okay, take your pick. But when you're in those situations, what happens? You forget a knife, somebody's got a knife. You forget the marshmallows, somebody gives you some marshmallows. It's not like, I want $5 for these marshmallows. Um, you're just like, yeah, here, let's all make s'mores together. And it's really in that kind of spirit of, we're not expecting something in return. You should not give something if you expect it in return. And this is why I remember taking a course on boundaries in 2019, and it really radically changed my relationship with a lot of things, including myself. But one of the examples was, oftentimes we do things out of guilt, right? Or I should. So it's somebody's birthday, it's your birthday, and I decide to buy you a present. But by buying you a present, I actually put financial stress and pressure on myself. That's the nice thing to do, but it's actually harming me. So it's not kind. Kindness considers both parties. The kind thing would be to write you a card and still express, birthday wishes, but not necessarily, put harm towards myself, because what's going to happen? I would then get resentful when it's my birthday and you don't buy me a present. Well, am I giving you a present just so you give me a present back? Like, what a load of baloney, consumerism at its finest, right? It's like, I would rather have the quality time with you and just have a conversation. And so when we can come from that place, I think the relationship energy shifts and we're able to um, get more value that's not monetary. I think we get so hung up on the dollar value of stuff, or how much money we make, or do you have the latest gizmo or gadget? When in reality, that is just a symptom. The reason why you want that thing is just there's an underlying issue under there. Back to what your earlier point was, is you have to like yourself when you get to the top of the mountain.
Mhm. And I love that. It's one of, honestly, I had written it down in preparation for us talking today, is leading with kindness. And that's
Mm,
not just in your job, it's in everything you do, in your relationships, in your parenting and everything. Like, be kind. Like, you never know what other people are going through. You never know what people are facing when they're not in front of you. And I love that you highlighted the difference between being nice and being kind, because they are very, very different. And sometimes they get kind of muddled into the same category. But when
yeah,
you truly lead with kindness, I mean, you're never expecting anything in return, but you're always getting something. Like, you're
absolutely.
getting fulfilled by seeing the impact that kindness has on others. I had lunch with a girl yesterday, and she was telling me that one of her customers, his teenage daughter is going through cancer, and she's like, I
Mm,
wanted to take her something, but like, what do you get? And she took her a bowl of 9 lemons, and I
mm,
was scratching my head going, what? And she said, well, I read and I heard that this doctor had said, if you always keep 9 lemons around in your kitchen or whatever, like, it brings joy and it brings prosperity. So I just kind of shared that with her, and like, that was kindness. Like, she didn't spend a ton of money. Like, she wanted to bring her something that maybe was a little different. It was creative and brought her joy. And especially during such a hard time that no teenager should have to go through. And I loved that. I loved the creativity behind that. My sister last night was like, I'm going to go buy some lemons tonight and put them in my house. Like, that's going to be my go-to gift from now on, is taking people lemons. And I was like, how ironic, the whole "if life gives you lemons." No, like, be prosperous.
yeah, that's so interesting. I love these little stories and these little nuggets because it brings the humanness back into it, right? And it makes it more sens sensational is not the right word, but the sensations that we can feel, the awe that we can feel, the connection, uh, that is the powerful magic sauce that really makes, us so amazing in a lot of ways as humans, right? As these creatures who create story and meaning, rather than it being this like transactional thing or very kind of rigid, or like, well, if I keep you at arm's length and I don't feel anything, then we don't have to ever touch the hard stuff, then everything will be okay, right? But that's a very superficial way to live.
Mhm. And it's not inspiring at all.
No.
Kindness inspires kindness.
It
I
does. And in order to be inspirational, you have to be inspired. And it's about, if you want to be influential and have influence, what are you allowing to influence you? Right? Are you controlling the things that you're exposed to, right? And making sure you're not consuming the junk food, as we talked about yesterday, whether that's physical food or mind food.
Mhm. No, absolutely. And you have to figure out what does inspire you. And sometimes, again, it's not comfortable to find that because you really got to do some self work and look at your mindset, your current mindset, and where's the negativity coming from? What are you feeding yourself? Like you and Meryl talked about yesterday, that is actually um, holding you back.
What are some of the things that you do to make sure that do you have any triggers where you'll notice, hey, I'm in a state where maybe I'm not as focused, or I'm eating too much junk food? Do you have some triggers that you can share with us on how we might be able to build awareness around that?
Mine is I get real reclusive. So all
Mm,
of a sudden I'll just like be very quiet where normally I'm very outgoing and kind of always smiling, walking around on, want to be more alone. And so that's been over the past couple of years, honestly, that's where I've noticed like
yeah.
something's going on that I need to look at. What is it that has put me in this position? What am I doing? Have I changed something recently in my daily habits? Is
Mm,
there something in a relationship that I need to address that I'm just trying to sweep under the rug and hope it goes away? So that's been mine. It's just when I become reclusive, then I realize that there's some work that needs to be done.
yeah. No, that's a big indicator for me too. If I start to isolate myself, um, I that's usually a signal that there's something I'm not addressing, and I wrote something down this morning actually. Um, where is it? It was, have the hard conversation, be direct. Hard conversations make for an easier life. And I forget what newsletter I was consuming at that time when I wrote it down. But it's so true. When you sweep things under the rug, you're not addressing the root, right? And it can be easy to do sometimes, particularly if you travel a lot for work, right?
Mhm.
Because then you're like, "Oh, well, I'm only here for a couple days, so, like, let's just enjoy this time, and we'll do that later," but then later never comes.
Mhm.
So it's really important to give both you and whomever might be related to this hard conversation the gift of being willing to sit in that discomfort, so that on the other side of it, you can grow together rather than it, creating this rift between you.
Yes, the hard conversations. It's one of my favorites. And I actually anybody that ever works with around me, I share with them a story of when I was younger and I was a dispatcher, and we had a plane crash that unfortunately resulted in the crew
Mm,
dying. And looking back at the entire sequence of events that led up to that, it really changed my mindset on so much. And I was so young and I still had so much to learn in this industry. But one thing that it taught me is that I will never, ever lead in an environment where I cannot be challenged. And I tell my team that all the time. I don't know everything. I don't care how long I've been doing this. And I don't care if you just started yesterday. You can challenge me. If you think that something isn't right, we will have a conversation about it. I don't always have to be right. I can change my mind. That is actually my superpower, is that I can change my mind. And I want to be challenged. I want you to tell me when you don't think something is right, because that's how we get better. That's how we get safer. And that's how we build trust and vulnerability, is by being able to challenge each other
yeah,
and not always take offense to it. Like, I can't believe this person that hasn't been doing this half as long as I have would think they could challenge me. Now,
right.
like, it ultimately can save lives if you can challenge and you feel free to challenge those around you.
Absolutely. I mean, working in Asia, there's a very high power distance, meaning that if you're the boss and you tell me jump, I'm going to ask you how high. I culturally, it's not comfortable or safe for me to question you. So for me, it really gave me, such an opposite spectrum, and learning to navigate in that space and to motivate people and build trust so that they would communicate with me and would raise issues. But this is why there are the cases like that Korean Air flight, where the co-pilot asked the captain a question. And by that question, he knows what's happening, but the captain shut him down and they flew into the side of a mountain.
Mhm.
Imagine being so unsafe that you didn't push the boundary on asking a question because of a safety concern, because of your discomfort with a hard conversation, like literally knowing you're going to die. And that there's been multiple cases of that. And that's obviously an extreme example. But it is so important, and it's not to be flippant. It's not to cause problems, but it's when we can create safe spaces for people to ask questions and we don't call them stupid or, make it a personal vendetta against them. I think the failing of humans is that we think that everything is about us. So like
Mhm.
if that new rule came into place, then it's because, well, Jamie didn't like my way, so she had to do it that way. It's like, no, it had nothing to do with me and my way. It was just, this was a path that makes sense, and so understanding that things don't happen because of your actions all the time. Again, sometimes things happen, right? And it's not a personal vendetta when someone asks you a question. And so to just be defensive all the time is, it's like being a teenager. They're defensive about everything,
Mhm.
right?
And if you wanna take
Emotional
it to
maturity is required.
it is, and if you wanna take it a step further, okay, you create a space where you can be challenged, that's one level. You wanna go another level? Ask people what they don't like about your style, your management, your leadership. Ask them how you can be better. That's really hard conversations, talking about hard conversations, and
Yeah.
it's something that it takes a while, at least in my experience. It takes a while for people to feel comfortable and feel safe enough to give you that feedback,
Yeah.
and once they do, guess what? It's very uncomfortable. It is very
Yeah.
uncomfortable to hear from someone else things that you are not doing well, things that you should be doing a lot better, things that you should know better of, and you don't even realize it till they tell you. But again, that's where the growth comes from, and I always tell, those around me, like, we can't be better if I'm not getting better, if you're not
Yeah.
getting better. And the only way I get better is if I know what I'm doing wrong. And so if
Absolutely.
you as a leader can create that space where they feel like they can come to you and they can honestly tell you, challenge you, and tell you where they think you personally can improve, then the potential for growth is just never ending.
Absolutely. And it's this concept of dialogue of, not getting so emotionally worked up that you cannot receive information.
Mhm.
And so that's why it's so important to actually understand the signals your body is giving you, that you understand, oh, hey, I'm feeling a little bit of embarrassment right now. Okay, that's good data. In order to navigate this, what are some things I can do? Right? Because then you'll have much more constructive conversations. You'll recognize, okay, you know what? I need to go take 5 minutes. I'll be right back. And I think back to, fights I would have with my mom, and I would push and force and be like, no, you have to tell me right now. You're not leaving. And I would demand that we'd address it right then when she wouldn't be ready to. So, of course, what does that do? You back a bear into a corner. You're gonna have a not a fun situation on your hand. So understanding, in the whole golden rule, it's wrong. Don't treat others like you want to be treated because they may not want to be treated like you. Treat others how they want to be treated. Listen, receive information. The more information you can receive, the better. So if you're receiving information about your emotional state, you know how to regulate that. Not only are you modeling it for other people, but you're creating better situations for, forward action or sideways action, right? Again, the pivoting, there's 360 degrees that we can move in. It's not about, left or right. It's not a 90-degree flip or a 180 flip. It's not these hard angles that we demand them to be.
No, and yeah, no matter what angle it is, it can still be progress.
Yes. And the small progress, like that one little bit every single day, over time, that's huge results. You know, we want the instant gratification. We wanna do one sit up and, like, look in the mirror and be like, "Do I have abs yet?" You know? As amazing it would be if that was the case, that's just not how it works, but it's that compounding interest, right? Just doing the small steps every single day and analyzing along the way. I think that's another thing we forget about is we set a course and then we're not checking in. So we're not paying attention to the data and all the information we have until we're down the line and we go, "Oh my gosh, I'm so far off course. How did I
Yep.
get here?" And then we beat ourselves up and, we go through that whole process.
No, I love that. And you actually recommended, I think it was you or one of the guests you had that recommended Atomic Habits. And
Yes.
that's one thing that he
One of my
talks about. It's
favorites.
just like those little changes in how you respond, the things that you do, like it really does compound and it can make a huge difference down the road.
Yes.
I actually, you'd asked me for a quote and it was from that book. My favorite one is like when he says, growth is trading discomfort in the moment for satisfaction in the future.
Mm, I'm
I
gonna put
think
that
that's
in one.
it's perfect. And I've enjoyed still doing like his workbooks, James Clear. I think that book is just amazing, and I can't wait to reread it. That's a big thing I'm a believer in is rereading books because you pick up on it's just like
Yep.
watching a series. Like you pick up on different things. Like you go episode 1 through 10. If you start over, you're going to see different things in episode 1 that you missed the first time. So I'm a
Oh, yeah.
big advocate for rereading books. I'm rereading Pursuit of Excellence right now, Ryan Hawk. It's one of my favorites.
Nice.
And every time I find something different in there.
Yeah, because also where you're at when you are receiving this information is different, right?
Mhm.
Your capacity to receive or where your attention was, at that phase in your life at that particular season. And so you pick up on the things that are most relevant and most important to you now. And when you go back and you read it, you've got the baseline. And so you can actually take in more, or it's nuanced, it's the next level up, and you're able to take it on board. Whereas without the baseline, it won't work. It doesn't stick, right? Um, One of the things you mentioned about that feedback, at Ryan Leak at Leadership, and his question of how does it feel for other people to interact with you? And that is such a powerful question
Mhm.
because we don't often think about that, right? We're thinking about our experience and we can walk away from a situation thinking that went so well. That was so great. Meanwhile, the other person is walking away going like, "Oh my God, thank God it's over," you know? And so to ask this question, what's it like to be on the other side of you, really gives you pause to consider this before you go into an interaction and to get feedback. Because sometimes the people that love us will tell us things and it'll bounce off us like we're coated in Teflon,
Mhm.
right? We may not be ready to receive it yet. But when we come to them and we can demonstrate that we're ready to receive it, we ask this type of question, we can get so much insight from those types of real conversations. And it may not be easy to hear, the things that they have to say, but it is very important if you want to grow together in that relationship and also grow as an individual, as a leader, whatever role that you're playing.
This one is a little personal right now, Sarah, because not only did I inquire about this, but 3 people gave me the exact same feedback. So it's like, wow, this is really an issue. And it's that I'm intimidating. And I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm the least intimidating person. What do you mean? Like but it's not about me, right? It's not about how I see myself. Like that's how it felt to them to interact with me. That was the impression I gave. And that's something that I'm
Yeah.
actively working on.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's definitely feedback I've gotten in the past too, and I'd be like, "What? Really? No." And I think it's softened since like 7 years ago. I still remember my ex-husband telling me when we were dating, we were coming from the beach, we were coming off the MTR, and we were stopping by the office on the way home. and he got really quiet, and we ran into a colleague of mine, and he wasn't really talkative or anything. And so as we were walking back to my flat, I said, "Are you okay? Like, you just seem really quiet." And he said, "Yeah, I'm just um integrating what I just witnessed." And I was like, "What do you mean what you just witnessed?" He's like, "Well, as soon as you made the decision to go to the office, everything about you changed. Your walk, the way that you communicated with your colleague, like I've never seen that side of you before. And I could see why people are intimidated by you." And I was like, "Oh, what?" Like, I'm in shorts and flip-flops. How am I intimidating? Um, but it is true. It's important to understand, because good intentions don't mean anything when you're assuming what the other person is getting. And so it's important to ask these questions. I started a practice with Space Kind of asking my partner, my mom, my best friend, what do you think are my strengths? And what are some areas of improvement? And my mom actually shifted this year. She moved patience from the area of improvement to a strength. And I was like, what? Really? And
Nice.
when I told Pete, he kind of, my partner, when he hears something that's he's processing, he blinks a lot. So he was kind of like, and I was like, well, I mean, I've improved, right? And he's like, yes, yes, you've improved.
Oh, that's great.
um, but it's great to be able to ask it in that way too. It's like, it's not a weakness. It's just something that can be improved. And you're not going to be great at everything. But when you're aware of them, you can put systems in place, just like we do at work, right? To mitigate that. If you're going to have a big conversation, don't be hangry, like have a snack, you know, meal prep, do the things that are going to help you not be in that situation, because your tolerance is low, that type of thing.
And I love that you do it like regularly. Like it's an exercise. So like your mom, like you can see the change in what her answer was
Yes.
before to what it is now. I think that's great. So you can gauge your
And
progress.
my own ability to receive it, I can gauge my progress,
Mhm.
because it started with, let me send you a text and ask this question, to then, like, let's have some voice note exchanges, to we could just be on the phone or be sitting across from each other and have it, and it's not going to result in like World War III, you know? So, like, that's another part of that, the benefit of this kind of exercise and that regular reflection. Because also, again, hey, maybe guess what? Maybe next year, patience is not going to be it's going to go back to something that could be improved, because we go through these different phases, and whatever we're dealing with, maybe there's more stress, maybe the season of life you're in, there's a lot going on, right? And so some things that you were very good at are now things you could improve on, and vice versa. Maybe something else, maybe that situation has caused this one thing to now become a strength, because you've just had to be so resilient in whatever it is that you're facing. And so it's neither good nor bad. I really try to shift away from that type of thinking. Just how is it serving me and how is it limiting me?
Mhm. And I love that your progress isn't just based on what the answer is, like based on how you receive it, what you do with that information, where you are at that time in your life. There's
It's
so
how you
many different,
feel.
yes, so many different indicators that actually gauge whether or not we're progressing in a positive direction or
Yes.
so. It's great.
And that's what that internal barometer does for you, right? If you have your own internal scorecard, then it doesn't matter what other people have, right? You will be satisfied. Do you know when enough is enough? Like, so many of us know what we don't want, but we're quite elusive about what we do want. And we might still be figuring it out, and that's okay. But the more concrete we can get, the more specific we can get with it, then we can actually recognize when we have it. Right. And that's worth celebrating, learning what those limits are. And that can be, again, it can be a fun process.
It can. It can be uncomfortable because it goes back to like learning what your boundaries are, defining them. But it also, on the other side, it's going to be so much more fulfilling and a lot of fun.
Yes. It's also different, right? I'm sure, Jamie, that your internal metrics of success are different now than they were 20 years ago when you first started in business aviation over 20 years ago, or even from last year. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. It changes all the time. And, 20 years ago, I could have never imagined being in the position I am now. But I'll tell you, one of the biggest indicators of my success was not too long ago. A lot of times I'll pick my son up from school and bring him back to work with me. And he looks out the window and he goes, "Engines on the wing, Honda Jet." And I was like, it's, I'm so proud. I'm just so proud.
It's so cute. Yeah, it's
That would have never been on my barometer 6 years ago. But
yeah, right. And having kids, like what a shift in perspective and a shift of priorities and everything. I mean, even have a fur child, a fur baby, but
yes.
even that was actually part of my mom's reasoning for the patience. She's like, I've watched you with Sass, and there's been this progression, this growth.
Well, and
But
with
yeah.
Sass being so much like you, you're having to have patience
Oh
with
my God. Yeah,
the other
it's
version of you,
ridiculous.
the four-legged version of you.
We were talking about this before we went live. My mom actually told me last year. My mom came in May, so Sass would have been 2 months old. And she was sitting there, like, Sass finally was, like, taking a nap or something, and she's like, "This is hilarious. This dog is you. When you were a baby, you did this same stuff. You were stubborn, you were too smart, you figured out there was, like, medicine in the treats, like, whatever it was that Sass was doing that was frustrating me and I was having to problem solve." She's like, "This is literally you in a dog form. How did this happen?" I was like, I don't know. I just picked the right one, I guess. She really is my child. And back here, I don't know if you can see it on this shelf here, right there. Yes, I'm pointing correctly. There's a like old school 70s sign somebody got me for my birthday. And it says, the brown and gold kind of thing you would put on your desk. And it says classy, sassy, and a bit smart assy. And I was like, yes. So the fact my dog's name is Sass because she's sassy is like very much in line with all of the things.
I like that sign too. That's great.
Oh,
I
yeah.
need one of those for my office.
Yeah, no, there's some real fun ones. I'll see if I can find the website where she got it, and I'll send it to you.
Awesome.
Yes. All right. I think we're at the time for the questions that I love to ask every guest. We'll get at least some part of the podcast kind of like it normally runs, but this has been really great to just riff with you and have a conversation and improvise, say yes, and, really putting our skills to the test here.
I love it. I love it. It would have been so easy for us to just reschedule and say, we'll do it another day. There's too many difficulties.
Yeah. But we made it work.
We made it work and had so much fun doing it.
Yes, no, this has been great. And it's also shows you how you can do things in new ways. We figured out fun things to do with this moving banner, to just remind us during the whole show and remind everybody else. And it's been really wonderful. Thank you for pivoting with me and showing people how it can be done. So my first question, besides pivoting, since we did it live today, what would you say is one of your superpowers? Or if you have multiple, what are your superpowers?
So I really think, like I mentioned earlier, it took me a long time to get there, but having the ability to change my mind and see other people's perspectives and the way that I've always viewed something doesn't have to be the way that I continue to view it. I can change my mind, and that's okay.
I love that. How could other people start to develop this superpower? Because I know this is something that you can develop.
You really have to think about a time when you were wrong. And so you have to go to your failures and acknowledge that to yourself if you haven't done that already. Embrace where you were wrong and then acknowledge the right.
Yeah, that's very humbling, right? And it's also okay to be wrong. I think Pete will get a kick out of that when he watches this part of the podcast.
My husband too.
Oh man, it's funny how the way that we can be with the majority of people versus like the way we are in our most intimate relationships is often there's some disparity there, and I truly believe it's because we feel safer to take more risk and still be loved and accepted And so we sometimes push the boundaries a little bit, and maybe revert to some toddler-like behavior occasionally.
Yes. Yes. Agreed.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's really good. A failure list. And that also is a great creative exercise
Mhm.
because, it's not about trying to, oh, look at how many times you failed. It's like, wow, look at how many things you learned in that process, right? So you can go through the failure list, find the times that you were wrong, new data to support the new hypothesis. It's just like a science experiment, right? And then what are the ahas and insights you gained from it? I mean, think about science. If if science never admitted they were wrong, we'd still be doing things like bloodletting and goodness knows what else. So
Yeah.
not wearing gloves during surgery.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that mindset X-ray. Like it really is.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Who are the people, and they don't have to be people in your inner circle. These can be people that are fictional. They can be from the past, or not in your world, like you don't actually know them yet.
Mhm.
But who are the people that are on your personal board of directors?
So my grandma, she passed away last year, and she was just a little ball of fire. I mean, all 87 pounds of her was, she
Usually
was,
the smaller they are, the more fiery, right?
yes, yeah, she was feisty and just amazing. And really, in her last few years of life, she started sharing older memories, and it was just so, she was so inspiring to me. All the things that she did, and it's really fun to see a lot of those qualities in myself. So she's on there. My mom and my sister. So I come from a lot of patient and bold women, and so
Mm,
those three ladies are definitely on my board of directors. I truly
amazing.
believe in being surrounded by strong women. I think it
Yes.
makes a huge world of difference, and so they're definitely on my board of directors.
Amazing. Yes. Kim Kish shared a quote the other day in this group chat that we're in saying that celebration happens at the top, competition happens at the bottom. And I was like, yes, I love this because so many women get caught up in this trap. And I've been there too, where we try to compete with each other rather
Mhm.
than celebrate each other. And when we can lean into the celebrating each other, it's so much more powerful. And the same goes for men, right? You know, it's we operate a bit differently, yes, but when we celebrate our peers rather than trying to tear them down and compete with them, it's a much more fun and enjoyable experience in the process, and we can all rise up together, right? And ultimately, that's how, as a society and as a culture, we grow. And I think it's a real poignant time in our industry as well, but in society as a wider whole to look at those things. And I want to also point out that you mentioned your grandmother, because our elders have so much to teach us, and it's really, it's powerful to slow down and listen to them. They've
It
been
really,
through things, you
she,
know?
man, I didn't realize how much she had been through, but she really had. And on the daily, she was just pivoting and figuring out what did her family need, and then she would just go and do it. And she didn't ask permission, and she didn't ask for recognition for any of it. She just
Yeah,
did what needed to be done. And I think there's just so much beauty in that.
absolutely. Yeah, thank you for sharing. She
And I
sounds
think
amazing.
she was. And I think what you said is just so great too. And I've seen a huge shift in this probably over the last 5 years, I think, in our industry, of women starting to really see the advantage of lifting up other women and just people
Yeah.
in general, like celebrating people. And I had a gentleman, Nathan, I saw him at a event that was out at Dallas Executive a few months ago. And he was like, I've always wanted to tell you this. I don't know if you remember, but a long time ago, so I must have been about 19 or 20, he said, you were with your group of coworkers, I was with my group of coworkers, and there was just so much like animosity between the two. Like we were the competition, we were both in the Dallas Fort Worth area competing in sales and all this. And he said, you came over to our table and you were like, this is ridiculous. Like we all do the same thing. Y'all come over here and join us and let's just hang out. I don't remember this at all. But I think it's just so important. Like we all can help each other in some way. Yes, we can still be
Yeah,
competition and still lift each other up, celebrate each other's successes, and not feel that need to be competitive to the point where it just negative, it creates a
toxic.
negative, yes, a negative and toxic environment. So
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed seeing a shift in that over the last several years, and I hope it continues because I think just as much as bad energy is contagious, good energy is too, and so I hope that
Oh,
continues to
absolutely.
rise.
Yeah. I have a feeling it will. I think, part of it is, aviation and aerospace stem from the military, right? And so we have a lot of that there, and we need regulation, we need safety. All of those things are important. But when we look at styles of communication, styles of management, styles of relating, each generation is different. So there's always this adjustment as like they tick over. But it's also just the things we're aware of now. Again, not, when we look at the past self of us and we're not trying to make it wrong, it may not be right for today, but it doesn't make it wrong for existing, right? And there's benefit and value in the way that it has been, and we can continue to evolve. And I think that's also important to recognize because it's not about trying to cancel or, you know, um, demonize or say, well, why didn't you know better? Well, we didn't know better because we didn't know better. Like all of us, every single person involved. And, as like the human race raises its level of awareness and consciousness, we understand higher perspectives. So now we know, okay, well, there are different ways to do this. It doesn't have to be that only one way. So it opens the door for really fun interactions. I've been loving it too. I've noticed the same shift, particularly from the feminine side, being able to have like a wider woman's network in the industry and feel super supported from both mentors above me and people my age and also younger. And it's been really great to witness, and just the dialogue between everybody is improving. I think we've all had a lot of introspection since the COVID was the great accelerator for a lot of this work to take place. And hopefully we don't need another situation like that to continue this growth and trajectory. But we can certainly continue these narratives and continue that positive energy and evolution.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Final question. Very applicable with our photo in the background here. So we're out one day, and this alien comes to Earth, and they meet Jamie. What does this alien get about humanity? How do you represent humanity? What do they take away?
I truly hope that they take away, and not to repeat things that we've said earlier, but I truly hope that they take away kindness and they take that back to wherever they are, and that they feel the warmth and they feel sincerity from an
Mm.
interaction with me. That's all I can hope that anybody that has ever interacted with me feels.
Amazing. Well, I can certainly attest to that's how I feel. It was really, really awesome to connect with you, and it was just so easy. And I'm really excited that we were able to get the podcast together. I'm excited to see where the trainings you've been doing take you, and to celebrate those wins, and work together, find ways to collaborate, because I'm sure there will be plenty of that to come in the near future here.
Absolutely. It's a requirement.
Yes. Well, I hope you enjoy the activities that you've got going on this evening. I know there's some fun things that you're up to, and being part of the local community, which is amazing. And so celebrating all you do for business aviation, and celebrating you for being a friend, and pivoting with me live on air with everybody to see.
Well, thank you for pivoting with me as well, since I had technical difficulties too. It really has been fun, Sarah, and I'm looking forward to more collaborations in the future.
Yes, absolutely. If people would like to connect with you, if they're not already, what's the best place for them to do that?
My LinkedIn, so you can look me up, Jamie Santiago Munoz, and I think I'm the only one with that long of a name on there. Uh, those exact words. So please, yes, please connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to.
Amazing. And on for LinkedIn, where this is streaming as well, there will be an event, and so Jamie will be connected to it. But if you don't see her, please send me a message, and I'll make sure that you guys get connected. Jamie, thank you again for being here with me today. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and thank you to everyone who's been with us today live.
See ya.